Hey everyone, this is Erica with Creators in Coffee, and joining me today is Jacob Gettins. You may know him from his myriad of podcasts that he has on drifting, or maybe you worked with him through his ZZX digital agency, or you may recognize him or have heard him announcing Formula Drift. There's probably three other jobs there. I haven't mentioned, I don't think the man sleeps, but welcome, Jacob. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I do sleep. I would say I average between 5 to 6 hours. I track it pretty closely to try and make sure I get some sleep in there.
Okay, so if you track it pretty closely, do you use an Aura ring or one of the
Uh,
trackers?
I use a Whoop strap.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a Whoop strap back during COVID when I realized how much bread I was eating and realized I need to take my health a little bit more seriously. A lot of my family's in healthcare. My mom's a career nurse and saw how much I was working and is like,
Yeah.
hey, you very much need to take your health seriously. The amount of work that I put on myself. So
Yeah.
yeah, I take my productivity very seriously, but having good productivity means having good sleep and good nutrition with it.
I think that could be a whole episode in and of itself, is reminding creators, anybody in this space, that it is, a double-edged sword, right? Like I know a
Yeah.
lot of people do work late into the night editing videos or things like that, but it is important. So we'll save that for another time because we have plenty to talk about. So one thing, Jacob, that I was so impressed with you and why we wanted to sit down and chat is obviously, you run this agency, ZZX Digital, and so you see both sides. You work with brands, then you're helping them manage their digital presence, and then through that you help them manage brand partnerships with drivers, creators. And so you obviously interview a lot of drivers, you talk to a lot of drivers, so you have that empathy for both sides on what it takes to make a good partnership. And my guess is you've seen some great ones over the years. We won't ask you to name names, but you've probably also seen some that were not so great, that maybe you went into it thinking, oh, this is going to crush, and then it fell apart maybe for one reason or another. So would love to just hear your experience. I think all of the creators, all of the brand marketers that watch our vlogcast, could really benefit from your insight again, because you're one of the few people that sees both sides pretty regularly.
Yeah, to touch on that, I've seen both sides of it. I've seen some really really good campaigns. I've seen some terrible ones, things that looked really good in the beginning that ended badly, and then things that seemed really sketchy at the start that ended up working out incredibly well. To say that I've seen the gambit and been fortunately and unfortunately on all sides of those is definitely true.
Yeah, so let's jump in. So, what are some of your top tips for a successful partnership? And let's start with maybe advice to the brand. Like when a brand is approaching a partnership and they don't have someone like you, your agency working with them, what should they be thinking about when they're putting together partnerships with the driver and they want it to be successful?
From the brand side, and this also works from the driver side as well, is clear expectations and understanding what you want the end goal to be in any of these relationships. So from the
Hmm.
brand side, like if you are, if you're openly looking to work with creators or drivers, understand what you want to get out of it. Do you want just an increase in brand awareness? Do you want, clicks to your website? Do you want products sold? Do you want somebody that you can call on when you're in their area and they can bring a car to an event? Or do you want space to activate at events? Like having a clear understanding of what it is that you want to get out of the relationship is so necessary. If you don't know that, you can't expect the
Right.
driver to know that. You're basically setting both sides up for failure. If you have a race without a finish line, how do you know anybody's ever done well in that race? So
Right.
um, understanding what your goal is will help you select the driver, because there may be certain drivers that are really really good at one of those things but not good at the others, and it's often very difficult to find one driver that fits all of those criteria. It's not impossible. I've definitely seen it on multiple occasions, but sometimes taking whatever that influencer budget or driver sponsorship budget is and then separating it between a couple of different drivers based on what your goals are may actually be a better thing than trying to make one person or one team or one creator fit into every single bucket. If you're trying to make somebody become a jack of all trades, it means they're a master of none. So understanding what the strengths and weaknesses are and then suiting that person to that role is often much better than forcing them to try and do absolutely everything you need them to do.
Yeah, so that's great. So that's kind of like a two for one, knowing what your goals are and then using that to then pick the right person for it. And knowing that you're going to have an easier time if you're narrowing it down, right, on what those goals are, and you're looking for people that kind of meet the goal. And potentially, and you touched on this real lightly, but I think it bears it's worth repeating that you may be better off splitting that budget between a few smaller drivers than going for the big bang, the podium, they kind of spread that, whether it's the personalities, the audiences, and the kind of the bang for your buck, depending on what those goals are.
Right, exactly. So if you're a business and let's say you want to have more market saturation in a particular area, obviously you're going to want to find a driver that's located in that area, and then find somebody who, and this is just like an example, you're a brand. Let's say you want to open a new office, or you're opening a new office in Pacific Northwest per se.
Mm-hmm.
Find a driver that is a local, maybe celebrity or a local hero in that area, that's really well established in that area, that maybe doesn't travel the country, because you want to saturate that one particular region. Take a look, make sure that they've had partnerships in the past that have done well, somebody that's had partners for multiple years, and then that's going to be the person that you essentially would want to choose for that particular role, as opposed to somebody who's competing in a national series that might be local to that area. That's great, but if they're competing in a national series, you don't necessarily want the saturation all over the country. You're trying to saturate one particular area. So, find somebody who's at the track every single weekend. Let's say bring their car to your grand opening of your new office. Awesome. You can then have some sort of benefit with the sales reps in that area and say, okay, hey, listen, whoever sells the most amount of widgets this month, we're going to send them to the track, go do ride-alongs with the driver that we sponsor. Cool. That's now an incentive for your staff. So now you're utilizing that driver in a way that's not just advertising, that's not just brand growth or saturation, but now you're utilizing the driver to incentivize your staff. So you're increasing sales through incentivizing with an investment that you already have. And now the driver's happy because they can interface with whoever those staff members are at that business. You're growing that relationship. You're, once again, incentivizing the staff to sell more. It's a win-win-win in that type of situation. We've got this huge driver that we spent a whole bunch of money on, but he's only home for 2 months of the year in the Pacific Northwest in January and February. What are we going to do with him then? You've really got to think past surface level when it comes to partnerships.
I love that example too, because you bring up another thing that I see when we work with brands, and onboarding them onto our platform, and they're building out a campaign. They think through maybe just this one slice of it, which is maybe this partnership to get content or the partnership to get awareness. But I love that you bring in this other side. There's all these other creative things you can do. You can turn it into an experience. You can turn it into an incentive for your sales team. You can turn it into a contest for your customers. You can turn it into a meet and greet for your local. I mean, there's so many things you can do other than just this sometimes distant social media relationship. It can be so much more, and you can, again, kind of leverage that investment in so many ways. So I love that. Flip it on the other side. So from that same point, from a driver standpoint, right, I think sometimes, depending on the size of the driver, depending on their experience, right, they can sometimes take a back seat in the process. And interestingly enough, I'm going to do a terrible, obvious pun here, but they don't feel like they can drive the relationship, right? Like they feel like they have to sit back and wait for the brand to tell them what to do. Talk about what your advice would be to drivers when you're going into partnerships with a new brand, kind of for the first time, and then as it evolves, what would you give advice?
Similar to that conversation, from the brand side, is understand that if a brand knows, understand what they want out of the relationship, and then start to tailor towards that. But my biggest advice to drivers right now is, we're at a point now where we assume a sticker on a car is a default, right? It's not a bonus. It's not something you're going to sell with. That is essentially mandatory in almost all partnerships right now. You should also think that content creation is also a default in almost every scenario. There's things like discounted parts or free parts where, depending on your level of influence, that may or may not be a part of it. That is up to you and how you build your sponsorship deck and proposal deck or partnership deck. But realistically, understand that a sticker on the car and content creation of some sort is basically a default. And everybody that you are competing against, looking for partnerships, is doing those things. So now you need to start to think outside the box. You need to think, what can I offer brands that another driver maybe isn't? It's not just drivers that you're competing against. You're competing against the entire marketing budget. You're competing against Facebook ads, Google ads, email, text messaging, billboards, radio. As a driver, when you are partnering with a brand, you are competing against every other form of endemic marketing. So it's not just other drivers. It is incredibly difficult to get these partnerships. You very much have to think outside the box. So that ride along program with distributors, that's a very basic. That is just one step removed from base level. You really have to start thinking even further. So try and get as creative as you can. Take a look at the brands that you are looking to partner with. Understand what their follies are, understand where their weaknesses are, things that they're not doing that you could help with. And that's where you need to try to insert yourself. A good practice is go and take a look at like their bad reviews. If you're looking at partnering with somebody, take a look at their bad reviews and understand where the weaknesses are from that company and see if there's a way that you can creatively help them with that when it comes to what you're doing in that partnership. Almost every company should be aware of what their downfalls are or what they need to improve. And realistically selling any sort of product, which at the end of the day, your race program is a product. Whenever you're selling an item, all you are doing is relieving a pain or trying to improve some sort of part of life. Very traditional marketing strategies are, you have a problem. This problem makes your life bad or worse than it already is. And we're going to make sure that you are fully aware of what that problem is. And now we're going to solve it. Deodorant is an example I use all the time. To put it bluntly, like, you stink. Because you stink, your life sucks. You can't speak to people because they run away. You can't get that new job you wanted. You're not, everything is bad. Use our deodorant, smell amazing, get the new job, and everything's better. You can look at the sale of almost any product within that. It is identify the problem, grind that problem in, and then resolve that problem. And that's basic selling and basic marketing. As a driver, use the exact same technique. Identify where a company's weakness is, not pressure them and explain and push harder to tell them that they suck at that thing. You have to be kind of careful.
There's some diplomacy there.
Right. But present a solution to resolve that problem with your race program. And if you can do that, that partnership, that pitch is now going to be consumed much easier, as opposed to here is a slightly formatted PDF that I'm going to cold email to you and I hope you open it. I've personally never heard of anybody landing a sponsorship by cold emailing somebody out of context with a PDF and it working. Maybe it has. It's never gotten back to me. And I've never personally brought on a partner that's done that, unless I've already known who they were.
You'd met them and you'd ask them to send that or follow up with that, or
or they're already a big celebrity, or there's somebody that's known in my space, and then I get an email from them. I go, oh, okay, I know exactly who you are. This is good. But they've usually done so many other things to get to that point. It's no longer a cold email at that point. It's a warm email, because they're fully aware that I know who they are, and it's a different dynamic.
And I would say, and you bring up such a good point, and I've talked to so many drivers and creators in different spaces, whether they're builders or photographers or videographers, and it is a business. I know you want to build your cars and you just want to race, but that's no longer the world. Like, find yourself in a race team that will bring you on to just race. But even then, you look at even at an F1 or an IndyCar, NASCAR, these guys are being asked to be social media stars, right? And some women, but they are being asked to do all the things too. And it is a business. And to even get to those levels, they were asked to treat it like a business, or they had to treat it like a business. And so I think it's important. I love how you say that. Like, you do need to figure out what that is, and whether it's getting help from someone in the industry, it's asking other drivers for advice of like, what works for you, but it is treating it like a business. It is doing that research. And I would probably say, even if one of those larger, more famous drivers were to send a cold email or a warm email like that, more than likely they did what you just said. They looked that company's website, or they had an idea, or they saw them at PRI or some event, and they're like, their activation was terrible. Like, I use their product. I love this product. This is bad. I could help this. And usually probably that email does say that, hey, I couldn't help but notice at, this event, you didn't have anything. There was no buzz around your setup. If I were to be there, I could help. I mean, I could totally bring my car. I could do this. But I guess as it comes with a proposal or an idea already baked into it, specific to that brand.
That's a key thing there too, is your proposal, your letter, whatever it is, should be bespoke to the brand that you're pitching. I had somebody book some time with me this week, actually, and we went through their sponsorship proposal, and they showed me one for a particular brand. And I'm looking at it, and it didn't get to the point until like page 6 or 7. And I had to explain to the
Mm,
person, like, listen, if I owned the company you were pitching, I would have made it to page 2 and just deleted the email, because I need to know the why. You need to give me the why right off the bat. You want to do an awesome cover page, whatever, I'll skip that. It is what it is. The first thing I look at, I need to know why you're even sending this to me. If I have to read 3-4 pages of this is my drift team and this is not to sound terrible, I don't care,
right,
because
right.
there's so many drivers with incredible
You look the
stories.
same. Yeah,
Yeah, that we're jaded by all these incredible come up stories now.
yeah,
You just need to give me why you're sending this to me. What do I get out of this? Because
right,
if I have to go searching for it, I'm not going to. I don't have the time.
right.
There was a time for a brand where I went through 250, 300 proposals, and there were things like if it came on a Word doc, it was gone immediately. I didn't even open it, because if you're not willing to take the time to format something properly, you're not going to be willing to take the time to send me assets correctly. Maybe I threw out some incredible proposals, and I probably did. But at the
Right.
end of the day, I need to be efficient in the way that I go through it. And if there's standard things that you can't follow, I can't assume that the rest of the program is professional. And that's just what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
That's such a great point. I think we'll wrap up on this is, because you brought out some really great points. We'll sum it up at the end, but you just made the comment of, in that case, you were representing the brand,
Yep.
right? I need to be efficient in how I go through things. And even you, as a person brought on to help the brand through this, I think this is an area where I see on both sides, this need for empathy. Both sides are busy,
Yep.
right? And just because someone works for a brand or they're a brand representative doesn't mean that they've got all the time in the world to read through 300, 400 proposals or to read every cold email or to read everything. And sometimes I heard a lot of grumbling from people like, oh, they just don't even get back. They're whatever, they're jerks, those guys, and they never respond. And, the brands don't care about us. And, I had to remind some people like everybody in this room is emailing them. They
Yeah.
just had up on a panel saying we do sponsorships and we pay. You better believe every single driver in this room is leaving and trying to email these poor people on this panel now. Right. And so, there's this empathy and this thing around efficient. It's not being mean. It's not trying to make it harder for you, the driver, but it is trying to make it efficient that when there is more of a standard, more of a format, it is easier for the brand to go through that. Talk a little bit about like what are those things that a driver should keep in mind when they are approaching a brand for a sponsorship to have a little bit of that kind of two-sided empathy. And then inversely for brands, maybe what you would advise them of kind of that empathy side for the driver of like, hey, understand that, they do usually work full-time jobs and they fix their cars at night and then they race on the weekends. What would be that kind of last kind of tip of, hey, keep this in mind when you're doing this?
So for drivers, one thing to keep in mind is be conscientious of the time of the person that's doing the marketing, whoever's handling that, whether it's an agency or somebody internal. As we alluded to, I don't sleep a lot. I don't have a lot of time. I have to time block my days. I need to know exactly what I'm doing in almost 15-minute increments. If something is not efficient to me, if something is not organized well, every time that you add a hurdle, anytime you add a sticking point where it's going to make my life even slightly more difficult, you increase the likelihood that I'm going to drop off. So whatever you're doing, whatever you're approaching, however you're handling that situation, in person, digitally, whatever, be direct, be efficient, be organized, be clear in what it is that you want.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to dig and try and figure out what you want out of this relationship, I'm not going to. And this is a complaint that I've heard with brands and stuff time and time again is it took me 3 meetings to even understand what the heck they wanted. That's not good. Even in your email, if you are cold emailing and you just straight up say, this is exactly what I want from you, and this is exactly what I'm going to give to you, the chances of that cold email actually going and doing something, it's so much more likely. If I got an email today from one of the brands that we manage that says, hey, I need $5,000 worth of products, MSRP, here are what the products are exactly. I'm willing to do 6 1-minute videos for you by this date. I'm going to be like, oh, well, that's pretty clear. Okay, well, let me open this up and see who this person is.
Yeah.
Shoot your shot. Be very direct, but very clear. Don't make me fight through 6 paragraphs of things. Make it really clear.
I love
The
that.
more efficient you can be, the more likely it is that we're going to get to it. I'm definitely like speaking from experience on that.
I know.
Even this week. Yeah.
Yeah, which is what makes it so powerful, right? Everybody needs to listen to this. Listen to Jacob. Okay, so what about for the brand? What is the advice you would give them from an empathy standpoint.
On the brand side of things, be prepared to teach a little bit. We do expect a lot of young drivers and a lot of even older drivers as people to be perfect, and we can't. If you really, really enjoy working with somebody, you really want to work with somebody, be prepared to take a little bit out of your time to make your expectations clear, to teach them how you want things done. You cannot ever expect anyone to get better at something without letting them know that they're failing at something. And it hurts sometimes to do that. And if the driver is aware of that, and most drivers are very aware of their follies, because they're in motorsports, there's only one person that's happy at the end of the weekend, and everybody else has to admit that they weren't perfect and have to improve. And the drivers that get better are the drivers that take notes about the things that they screwed up. And those are the drivers that look into improving those things. So drivers are very, they have to be self-critical. It hurts. The drivers can be very emotional because of that, because at the end of the day, everything that's going on with their program falls on their shoulders. So they need to be aware and self-critical of where they need to improve. Yeah. So as a brand, be aware of that drivers can be emotional because they are in incredibly high stress situations when it comes to both racing, financial, personal. All of this is very difficult. It's insanely difficult. And brands can forget that, but also understand that these drivers are willing to improve because that's what racing is. So if you teach them, if you take a few minutes out and just say, hey, thank you for sending all of your photos, I really like that. Can we please just make sure that they're organized by event or organized by photographer or organized by some way? So when my media team is pulling them, I know who to tag. I know what event you were at, and I don't have to research that. That's a bit of a tip for drivers as well. Please do those things. But from the brand side of things, don't just expect them to be perfect without you providing any input on things that they can improve on.
That was awesome. Jacob, thank you so much. I just want to sum it up real quick. So, from the brand side, take that effort to know your expectations. Don't just, like whatever you got, like that'd be good. Set your expectations. That's going to set the whole partnership up. It'll give the driver something to react to. And then that helps you to pick the right driver based on those expectations you set, and knowing that, it may be over time, you might have to, I don't use the word reinforce, but educate around clarifying those expectations over time, and get creative around what a campaign could be, right? Really maximize those investments. If you're going to do a partnership, maximize it, use it to, what you could really get, whether that's, doing experiential incentives. I really kind of love all of that. And for the drivers, right, when you're going into it, if really understand those goals, ask clarifying questions. If they set expectations, try to understand as much as you can up front. And if they don't set expectations, ask for them. Ask the brand what those goals are. And if you're going into something cold, or you have a plan, you're going to an event, and you want to meet certain brands, do your research up ahead of time, do your due diligence, know what those weaknesses are. Maybe look at bad reviews. I love that advice. My old world is we used to do reputation management for car dealers. You can only imagine what that was like. And so, but I love that's so true though, right? Where can we help? Where can we come in as a driver? What are things you can do? And then ensure that your presentations or any kind of communication you're having from the brand is bespoke to that brand or that partner, and you cut to the chase. Cut to the chase, jump to it, get it out there. What's your ask? Put it in the email. Don't make them weed through a lot. Be really conscientious of, their time. Inversely for the brands, give feedback. Give feedback to those drivers. So such great tips. It's like a master class in partnerships. So I couldn't be happier. Thank you so much, Jacob, for the time. I appreciate it, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Erica. And I really appreciate your time in doing this. This was a lot of fun. It's something I'm very passionate about. And anytime I get to talk about motorsports and marketing, I'm pretty happy.
That's awesome. All right. Thanks so much. Bye.